Thanks. See you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of Western Michigan University and previously Dean and Professor of Economics at Georgetown University, Dr. Edward Montgomery.
Thank you. I'm from that sector. When you think of innovation, you think of us. Well, not really, all right? Higher ed. But I'm here to talk about education, why it matters for us, particularly in the state of Michigan, what we can do to make sure that we have a vibrant educational ecosystem. And I use the word ecosystem deliberately because they're all intertwined. Whether you're talking about pre-K education, whether you're talking about elementary schools, high schools, community college, higher education, advanced degrees, they all rely and depend on each other. And so the cooperation of all of the elements of this system are necessary for us to be successful in producing the talent that we need to grow as our economy and provide the kind of quality lives we want for our citizenry. So when you think about the pieces, don't think about them as either or, think of them as both and. We need all of the pieces to function well. Just like the body needs all of the organs to function well for it to survive, the educational ecosystem needs all of the components for it to survive and to prosper and do well. So I said education matters. I think, let me see if I can have the first PowerPoint. You've probably seen versions of this slide over and over and over again, talking about the need for talent. It's estimated that 65% of the new jobs that are going to be created by the year 2020 will require either a college degree or some kind of advanced education. What that translates into in terms of the state of Michigan is today there are about 175 new college graduates that we need, that you need as employers, that are not being produced, not getting their degrees. There are about 126,000 students with a certificate or an associate degree. Think about people with a trade certificate, carpentry license, apprenticeship skills that are not being produced. So we have a significant gap, nearly 300,000 students missing by the year 2020, which is just 2 years from now. Big talent gap going into the future. Again, if all of the future jobs, if 65% of the future jobs are going to require advanced degrees, you would want at least 65% of your population to have those degrees. In the state of Michigan, it's closer to 45%. Okay? So we have a large, significant talent gap that's out there. It's true for the nation. It's true for our state. Well, talent gap wouldn't be a problem if you were filling it. But what do we see instead? Despite the fact that the need for college graduates, despite the fact that I just told you there are 175,000 college graduate jobs left open, the share of seniors, the share of people graduating from our high school going on to college has declined every year since 2001. It's gone down from 72% to closer to 68%. So rather than filling the gap, we're going in the wrong direction. We're digging a bigger hole. Fewer and fewer of our young men and young women are going on to get higher education degrees. The same thing would occur if you looked at community colleges. This is enrollment in four-year colleges. If you looked at the share of people going to community college, that's the people who might be positioned to fill that talent gap, that 126,000 people gap that I was talking about. What's happening there? Well, unfortunately, it's the exact same thing. The number of people going to community college has fallen every year since 2011. We went down from about 347,000 people going in community college in 2010 to 267,000 enrolled last year. That's a 23% decline. College grads are dropping. Community college grads are dropping when the need is there and growing. We're going in the wrong direction. What about high schoolers, not necessarily going on, but taking career and technical education? Maybe that's the route they're going. But what do we see happening here? This is the number of people enrolled in CTE programs. In 2010, we had 139,000 students enrolled. Today, we have 127,000. We're down 12,000 students enrolled in CTE programs. Good news is it's gone up a little bit in the last couple of years. Bad news is it's still significantly lower than it was before. We're off 8% in terms of the enrollment in career and technical education. College grads down, community college grads down, technical and career education goes down. These are people who enrolled. That's not the number of people who completed. Only 1 in 3 students who goes into one of these programs actually completes it. And that's an increase. 1 in 3 CTE students actually complete the program. So again, whether you're talking about colleges, community colleges, technical education, enrollment's all going in the wrong direction. Completers are going all in the wrong direction. We're digging a bigger hole, not a smaller hole, for the state and our future. Why does it matter? It matters for those technical jobs. It matters for our ability to compete. It matters, are we educating students? Are they getting the quality education that allows us to compete with those people who we trade with? So I don't necessarily like international tests, but here's one that does compare 15-year-olds across different countries. And you notice the United States ranking in 2000 in math, it was 19th. By 2015, we were down to 39th. Reading, we were 15th. By 2015, we were down to 23rd. Science, 14th. By 2015, down to 25th. In every one of the international comparisons, we're falling. And so a state or a jurisdiction that is just average in the United States is falling relative to its international peers. If you're just average, you're not doing it cutting relative to our peers. The top 5 of our trading countries that we trade with, only one of them, Mexico, do we have a better educational score than. Of the next 5, only one of those do we have a better consistent educational score, India. If that's the only countries we can outcompete, we're going to have problems in the world global markets and being competitive, selling your goods and services. So we're going in the wrong direction again internationally, and we're not at the right level we need. And that's if you're at the U.S. average. That's if you're at the U.S. average. So where's Michigan? Oh, wrong way. So students in the state of Michigan aren't at average. If they were average, they'd be 25th. This is ranking of states. What's happened to our 4th graders? We were 28th, now we're 41st in reading. In math, 24th, now we're 42nd. In 8th grade reading, 27th, now 31st. 8th grade math, 34th, now 38th. So whether you're talking about math, whether you're talking about reading, whether you're talking about 4th graders or you're talking about 8th graders, we started out in 2003 around the middle, maybe a little bit below, and we've fallen significantly since then. On all of those metrics, we've fallen since then. Again, remember, and we're competing internationally. You're selling things abroad, and our U.S. is overall falling relative to our international peers. So that means Michigan is digging even a bigger hole when it wants to compete with kids from UK, with kids from South Korea, with kids from China, in terms of their educational performance. So we're falling down. You might say, okay, that we could come up with some explanations for why that may be happening in the state of Michigan. Maybe it's some selected school districts. Maybe it's a Detroit problem. Maybe it's an inner city problem. Maybe it's a racial problem. Maybe it's a poverty problem. But don't take comfort in any of those explanations. Overall, we look at this as 2017's test score. Again, we're in the 30s. If you take just the whites who took the test in the NAEP and you compare them to whites in other states, look where we're at. We're in the 40s. If you look at higher income kids, these are not Pell eligible kids. These are kids who don't get free lunch. Where are we at? We're in the 30s and the 40s. So whether you're talking about overall or by racial group or by income group, Michigan kids are falling behind. It's not somebody else's problem, it's our problem. Consistently across the board. You think, what about my local school? Surely it's doing great. So got some suggested school districts. These are districts, not individual schools, so it's the average of the schools in that district. And this is the share of kids doing well at advanced or proficient level in the English language tests. Advanced or proficient in English language tests. Rockford School, 50%. 8th grade, 53%. So that says 1 out of 2. Look to the left, look to the right. If you go to Rockford, your kid is not performing at proficient level. They're at basic or unsatisfactory. Forest Hills. Look to your left, look to your right. One of you is not performing at a proficient level. One of the kids is not performing at a proficient level out of the 3 sitting in a row. That's Forest Hills. That's the best in the state. Portage, bound by Kalamazoo, same problem, same issue. Half, about 40% of the kids are not at proficient level. Proficient, they're at basic or lower levels of reading competency. So again, it's across the board, it's across the state. We have not escaped it no matter which school district you're in. We have this fundamental challenge in this state of what's going on with the quality of the education we're providing our kids. If they don't come out of high school and grade schools and middle schools with reading and math and science competencies, they can't go on to technical education. They can't go on to 4-year degrees. They can't become the talent you need in your pipeline. Well, okay, so we've got a challenge. Is it a challenge that's the results of the fact that, because again, I gave you just rankings. We could have low rankings, not because we're getting worse, but because everybody else is just getting better. So this looks at the 10-year change in reading scores. Governor Bush, you're top of the charts. Number 1, in terms of the biggest positive change happened in the state of Florida. There are, I think, 13 states which have regressed in terms of their reading scores. We're in that lucky 13. We're 8th largest decline. So we're falling behind, and we're falling behind for both reasons. We're falling behind because we're not one of the states who've managed to capture the magic bullet and improve. The vast majority of them have, in fact, improved. They've done something we haven't done, which has pushed up their reading scores. We, in fact, have gone in the opposite direction. So we're falling relatively behind, and we're falling absolutely behind kids in the other states. And again, if you were just staying at average for the U.S., you're falling relative to your international peers. So you want to be at the real top of that chart. We're not there. So we're falling behind relatively and absolutely in terms of the reading scores. If you did it with math scores or any others, you get basically the same type picture. So this tells you who did the best. The top states in terms of change were Florida, California, Mississippi, Alabama, Hawaii, and Massachusetts. The states that have the highest scores overall, not looking at just the change, are Massachusetts, Minnesota, Virginia, New Jersey, Wyoming, Indiana, and Florida. So Florida is not only one of the biggest changers, it's one of the top 8 or 10 school areas in terms of the level of their school districts, in terms of the performance of their children. So what's in the water down there? People say, well, maybe it all has to do with money. I'm an economist. That's the first thing we'd look at. So here's the level of real spending, constant dollars. That's the top blue line from all sources per pupil in the state of Michigan. And what you'd largely see is the number in 1999, 2000 is roughly the same as the number is today. The decline is about 4%. That's a small, modest decline. It's not really a big decline. And in fact, if you adjust that last number for the fact that the state is having to put more money into MEPSers for teachers that are not counted in these dollars, that would push up that number by about the same amount as it declined. So it would be a flat number. It would be about another $700 per pupil. And so the real trend is basically constant. So whatever's happening in the state, it's not that money's going down, it's not going up in terms of real pupil expenditures, but it's not going down. So it's hard to say that's your explanation for the declining performance of us overall or relative to other states. Does money matter? Sure it matters. Many of the top performing states spend a lot more per pupil, but not all. There's poster child in that picture. The most obvious is Washington, D.C. Has the highest level of spending per capita of any state or district in the country, and it is consistently in the bottom 5. So money is a magic elixir. And there are other states who are spending near the bottom of the league tables who are at top of the charts. This sounds like a commercial for Florida, but again, I'll do the same thing. Florida's 44th in per pupil spending, and as I said, it's 8th overall in terms of the level, and 1st overall in terms of the rate of change in spending. So money matters, but it's not a magic bullet. It's how you use those resources that matter. One of the things that shows up here, 51% of our dollars that we spend in Michigan go to instruction. In states like Florida, it's 56. In states like Massachusetts, it's 61%. So there's something about where we're spending our dollars which is not delivering the bang for the buck that you would see in other states. So if you really want to tease out what should we do differently, you have to think about how you use your resources, not just the level of the resources that we want to deploy. Okay? The biggest other change here is what we do on student support. That's things like guidance counselors and health professionals and so forth. That's another big difference between us and Florida. But the biggest thing you want to concentrate is on the share of money that goes to instruction. Again, that doesn't count things like liabilities for retirees. One of the bigger components of our spending on workers is expenditures for legacy costs. We spend more on retirement and health benefits for retirees who are already retired to fill in unfunded liabilities than we do for current workers. So a big part of our cost structure has to do with legacy. So what effect that does is there. It's real. It's part of our budgetary expenditures. Second thing that other thing that people might look at is, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Are we organized somewhat differently? Not just do we spend our money differently, are we organized differently than the other states? So Michigan has a population of around 10 million people. I tried to pick some other states that have populations around 10 million. Georgia, North Carolina are closer to 11. New Jersey and Virginia are slightly smaller than us. But these are all states with about the same number of people in them. And what you'll notice is the number of public school agencies in Michigan is dramatically higher than any of our peers. It's dramatically higher than any of our peers, and particularly higher than the states in the South, Georgia and North Carolina, and particularly higher than Virginia and Florida. Again, Florida is a state, didn't have 10 million people, it's got 20 million people. So Florida's twice as big as we are, and look at the number of state agencies they have, 75 to our 902. 75 to our 902. Conventional units, we have 542, they have 67. So it's about 12%. So we have far more cooks, if you will, units you have to organize, cats you have to herd to achieve educational gains in our state than Florida, and in our state than in other comparably sized states. We have the most regular units, we're number 7 in that. We're not number 7 in population. We have a lot of cooks in our kitchen. A lot of cooks in our kitchen. It's a question, is that a challenge? Is that a problem? Fortunately, I don't have to answer that because you're going to have a great speaker come in afterwards and talk to you about that. I just get to lay out the problem and run off the stage. Thank you very much.